Hi everyone, this is Tiani from Coffee Chat. Welcome to our Coffee Chat Classroom today. Today we're going to talk about returnees here in Japan and their job hunting. And then we are very gladly to have Sakura to join us today. Hi Sakura.
Hi everyone, hi Tiani.
First of all, let me just briefly introduce to all of you about what is Coffee Chat Classroom and what do we do. So Coffee Chat is a small group of volunteers who have experience in HR recruitment here in Japan. We provide free career counseling service to the students whose offers and careers got impacted by COVID-19. Coffee Chat Classroom answers the most frequent questions that we receive during our online mentor sessions, and then we summarize the challenges and try to answer all the questions within 5 to 10 minutes in an online classroom setting like this. If you have more questions that you want to follow up with us, or if you want to go just generally arrange a chat with us, feel free to search coffeechat4u.com and then reach out to us. We are looking forward to hearing from more students out there. So I'm going to pass it to Sakura. Woohoo! Could you please just briefly introduce yourself to everyone in front of the screen?
Yes, no problem. Well, thank you, Tiani, first for having me, and hello, everyone. Nice to meet you virtually. My name is Sakura. So just to give a quick overview on, I guess, my life path. I do have Japanese parents who were born and raised here. However, I was born here and then I soon went to the United States with my parents, and I pretty much grew up there my whole life. I went to college at the University of Illinois, which is a public school in the state of Illinois, and grew up around the Chicago suburb area. And after I graduated, I had my first full-time job, but I actually moved back to Japan, and that was about 4 years ago, and here I am today.
Woohoo! Welcome Sakura, and thank you again for joining us today. During our online mentor session, we received a lot of questions about being a returnee here in Japan, and they do face pretty much similar challenges. For example, the language barriers, the culture difference. And I realized that Sakura, you might probably have the same experience, and I summarized 3 of them. So first of all could you please share your experience in general as a returnee here in Japan?
Sure, I would love to. And this is such an important discussion, I think, for people like you who is watching, and also for me. So as I mentioned before, I pretty much grew up in America. And to give a little bit more context, my parents were Japanese, so they really were proud of their culture, and they wanted to make sure that I learn the language, watched Japanese TV, do all the traditions that maybe families would do back in Japan. So I had a really strong ties and really, connection to the Japanese culture while I was living in America. However, this was completely dramatic change when I came to Japan, because in Japan, I was really shocked because I thought that I had identified myself as, very Japanese when I was growing up in the States. But when I came to Japan, I was being treated as either what we would call故国子女, returnee to Japan, but more actually so as a foreigner. So a person who's not fully Japanese, which was very interesting for me. So in general, I actually did go through a huge identity crisis, still going through it now sometimes. But what I learned from this was that, you don't have to bound yourself to your say a country or culture just because you're from there, and really just try to understand who you are, what's important to you, and that is what's going to shape, who you actually are, instead of I guess the cultures that were tied to you biologically, let's say. So that was my general impression. In Japan, it was quite tough for me to get used to the language, the culture, even though I am Japanese. And I'm sure that many of you have probably felt this way. So just know that you're not alone. And I've been here for about 4 years, and things have gotten better now. So happy to report.
Exactly. I do know a lot of people, especially when they are grew up in a foreign country and then they still have their name as a very Japanese name. The expectation from the society can be different when they saw the name, but when they actually met you, they would think that you are very different, right? Yes. Well, glad that you're
exactly.
back. Glad that we met here in Japan.
Yes, glad that we met, Tierney.
So the second question is more relevant to job hunting. So there is a question about how did you actually plan and manage your job hunting when you first came back to Japan?
Sure. Great question. And just to give, again, a little bit more context, because I did study and grow up in the United States, I have originally really planned to stay in the United States. Naturally, I would grow up thinking this. However, actually, I was under my dad's working visa in the States. So if I wanted to stay in America, I did have to get a visa-sponsored job. At the time, I had studied in liberal arts, so like a communications and public relations degree. And unfortunately, for this type of degree, it's quite hard to get a visa-sponsored job in the US. So I did a lot of job hunting in my last year of university from America, looking for American jobs. However, I was not successful in that. So that's when I started looking in Tokyo for jobs with, companies that are a little bit more global or international and had that, culture that maybe I could possibly fit into back in Japan. I think maybe I can share a little bit more of the specific tips on job hunting. So I guess 3 quick things. One is apply to as many jobs as possible that you could see yourself doing. This doesn't mean you have to send out, hundreds and thousands of applications. Nobody has the time for that. But really, make sure you are not putting all your eggs in one basket because you never know what's going to happen. So I like to be over-prepared rather than under-prepared for job hunting. The second advice I would have is definitely tailor your resume. I know this may come off as a shock to some of you, but people in recruitment do actually read your resumes. And it's really important that the job that you are applying for, you tailor your resume to that. So let's say, adding in keywords you see in a job description that you're applying for and putting those into your resume, because these are the quick scans that, let's say, recruiters will do to identify, are you a fit for the role or not. So this is very important. It takes a little bit of time because you will be applying to a lot of different jobs, but it is a very important step to encourage. And the last tip I have is for interviews. Interviews obviously are a core part of the process in hiring, and obviously your performance there is so important. So I don't see why not prepare for your interviews. Why not over prepare? Why not prepare examples of your, let's say, school experiences or internships or clubs that you've done to show that you've had this experience. And if you cannot communicate that in a structured manner, or if you storytell effectively, then even if you have all this amazing experience, the interviewer will not be able to understand that. So definitely study upon how to interview well using things like the STAR method, and go through your experiences in the past, and make sure you prep for the interviews if you ever get the chance to go to one.
Exactly. Always practice make it perfect, right? And it's also the way to boost your confidence. During the interview, if you practice enough, you think that you have gone through every single questions that you would like to prepare beforehand, that would definitely help a lot. It's not really specific to returnees. I would recommend all the students in front of spring doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yes. So move to the last questions. That any tips would you like to share with people who share the same experience as you, as a returnee here, looking for a job?
Also another great question, of course. I have also 3 different tips that I'd like to share with you. So first of all, I know you may not want to hear this, but learn Japanese. And I'm going to say it again because it's hard. Learn Japanese. If you are considering a mid to long-term career in Japan, I have noticed and learned the hard way that some type of integration is very important for you to be successful in your career. So what this means is the easiest way to integrate is to learn the language. So you may not be perfect or fluent in Japanese, but if you are帰国子女or returning to Japan, hopefully you have some foundation of Japanese that you can work off of. And I want to encourage this because, just to let you know, when I came to Japan 4 years ago, I could do the basic conversation, but I worked in actually retail for about 2 to 3 years, and I had to practice every single day with customers in Japanese, and I could not speak keigo at all, which is the polite Japanese. So it was terrible. But over time, having those interactions, those simple interactions, I'm actually proud to say that I'm pretty much fluent in speaking Japanese now, and that has really helped to boost my career and also apply for the job that I am at now. So that's my first tip, definitely. I know it's hard, but it's definitely worth it. The second tip that I would have is really think about, what kind of unique passions or skills that you have that you can offer to Japan. So for example, some skills that you may have now, they may be a bigger asset to a company, let's say in Japan, as opposed to the United States. And again, this is a very simple example connected to the first tip that I gave. But again, if you're bilingual, if you can speak Japanese, if you can speak English fluently, that is already such a huge asset to most companies in Japan. So again, think about what can you contribute, what is unique, and what is needed in the market, and how can you apply that to get the job that you want. And the last tip that I have is a little bit more on the emotional side because, as Tandy mentioned, I've talked to you so much about this before. I definitely struggled a lot in the first few years of being in Japan, whether it's dealing with the culture shock, whether it's dealing with the Japanese societal or cultural obligations that I have. Again, it was a huge struggle. So something that's really important, I think, even during job hunting or not, is making meaningful connections with the people around you, maybe even students that are going through the same thing, or just friends that you can make in Japan to talk about these things and celebrate your successes and wins together. When I first joined and I told my manager how much I hated it here in Japan, he laughed at me and he said, because he's also a Kikoku Shijo, he said, Sakura, give it 3 years. See how you feel in 3 years because you're not going to be able to adjust that quickly. And again, I have to say that I've been here 4 years now. So having that emotional support where you can rant about things, where you can share your experiences, learn from each other, and get that really strong support you need to build your confidence is going to be, I think, really key for your experience in succeeding in Japan. So that's all the tips that I have for you today.
Thank you, Sakura, for sharing all of these. I think most of that is not only for the returnees here in Japan. I think it's very important to know that we are not alone. A lot of people have the exactly same experience as we do when we feel upset, when we feel sad living here in this environment, and finding meaningful connections is definitely very important. And also on top of that, I think there are a lot of organizations who support the students. For example, Coffee Chat is actually here to listen to stories and the struggles that people may have. So definitely reach out to us if you do have any questions. It's about today, and then thank you very much for your time, and then again thank you so much for Sakura's share, and then all the stories that you share and the tips that you give suggest to the students here in Japan. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, see you next time in our Coffee Chat classroom. Bye bye.